Hi everybody, welcome to Dandelion Cottage. I'm Leslie Watkins and today is Watercolor Wednesday. For today's subject, I've got a little leaf off of there. I have a specimen here that is a Roguchi Clematis. And this is what the flower looks like. You're looking at it from the bottom up because these things hang down like that. Okay, and there's an example of one of the buds. And when the flower falls off, like a lot of other clematises, you get a puffy little swirl of white filaments, which looks really beautiful. And as you can see, it's this beautiful, rich violet color, like an amethyst. And I paired it with a little piece of my licorice plant. And I have this growing in a pot on the steps to the front porch. And I thought that those colors together were really beautiful. So that's what I'm going to be working from. And I have something exciting to share with you today, and this is something that's a little bit different from what you typically see me do. But my friend Lisa Wang in Australia sent me some of her new signature paintbrushes. These are from China. They're made by a company called Ruhong brush, and they are handmade. They come in this beautiful box, and it's a collection of 3 different sizes, 1, 2, and 3. And you can see they have this magnificent point. They look a lot like traditional Chinese brushes. However, if I remember correctly, and there's Lisa's signature on the top of the handle there. If I remember correctly, they have been kind of redesigned to have more of a snap, to act more like a Western watercolor brush. So I don't know. We're going to check it out. I've never tried them. They're still in the box. They just arrived yesterday, and I am super excited to have them. Now, for those of you who don't know, Lisa is a wonderful watercolor painter, and I've actually pulled up a bio here so I can read a little bit to you. And it says, and here she is. Okay, there's Lisa. She's wonderful. She's a lovely, lovely person. And it reads, an award-winning artist and popular art teacher who lives in Melbourne, Australia. She grew up in China. She studied classical fine art and went on to get a lot of degrees and worked in fashion for a while. She is a signature member of the San Diego Watercolor Society, a member of the Victorian Artists Society in Melbourne, and was the vice president of the Watercolor Society of Victoria. She's had a lot of solo exhibitions. Now this is interesting, she paints in both oils and watercolors, like me. So we have quite a bit in common. When I took her workshop over at Riverside Art Workshops in Newburgh, New York, I was pleasantly surprised to see that she had a very similar background to mine, and that her approach to instruction was a lot like mine. So I felt very comfortable in her class, and I enjoyed it a lot. So I don't know if that just speaks to a classical training in general, or maybe some of the oil painting instruction and training gets into the watercolor and helps. But whatever, it was very enjoyable, and I really had a lot of fun and got to know her, and that was a pleasure. Anyway, it goes on and it says her work covers an extensive variety of subjects, including portraits and wildlife, which are her favorites. And in the workshop, we did both portrait and wildlife. We painted a cat. I don't know if you remember that, but you can, I'm not going to pull it out right now. It's wrapped up, but you can go back and look at my Facebook page, and you can see a lot of the things that we painted during that week at the Riverside Arts workshops. And she also did a magnificent portrait of our host Malcolm, which was just phenomenal. And then it goes on, it says her confident brushwork has an ability to capture light and details at the same time, making her paintings unique and highly sought after by art lovers and collectors worldwide. So, Lisa, if you're watching, thank you for the brushes. I absolutely love them. And also, while I was there, she had given me some paints, and I haven't had a chance to take them for a test drive yet, so I thought we would take the brushes and the paints for a little experiment all together. So these are Daniel Smith professional tube watercolors. I've got transparent yellow oxide, rose madder permanent, ultramarine violet, cerulean blue, and jadeite green. And I'm pretty sure these colors are highly granulating colors, which means that if you use them wet and allow the pigment to settle into the paper, it's going to create some really beautiful texture. So I think that'll be a lot of fun. And I've got this nice big palette that's ready to go. And I'm going to go ahead and squeeze out a little of each color. So I've got 5 all together. So I think if I, 1, 2, 3, 4, I think if I do every other well, because I may want to add some other colors. Now I'm squeezing out plenty of paint. When you're squeezing paint out onto your palette, don't put those little eensy-beensy pea-sized dollops of paint out. You want to be a generous painter, and you don't want to be going back in the midst of things to refill. So make sure you've got plenty. It's not going to hurt the paint to be left out afterwards. You can always reactivate it. And if you're too stingy with your paint, it's going to show in your painting. So don't be a stingy painter. And I'm kind of arranging these things in rainbow order. So I'm going from my yellow to my red to my violet, my blue. Whoa, that one jumped out of the tube. Okay, there's my cerulean. And my green. All right, so 5 colors. Usually you see me using just 3 colors. I like to use the 3 primaries, yellow, red, and blue. Today I have a yellow, a red, and a blue, and then I've also got a violet and a green. Okay, now I want to get my brushes out. Now typically when you get a new brush, they have a kind of a size to protect the bristles. So if I touch the points, they're stiff. It's almost like they have hairspray on them. Let me see how I'm going to do this. This palette's really awfully big for this little space, but we'll make it work. So I have a cup of water here, and hopefully, if I just let that soak for a minute, I'm going to go ahead and let them all soak at the same time while I get my paper out. That way, hopefully they'll be ready to go in a couple of minutes. But you want to make sure that you rinse all that size out of there because you don't want that to get into your painting. Alrighty, I'm going to need a glass palette. So I'm just going to grab this one because I'm going to work wet and wet today, I think. Get this so it's in the screen. This may not be the best palette to be working with. It's so big. Maybe I'd better put it to the side here. All right. Oh, this is a good strong size. I may have to go and rinse these under warm water for a minute. It's starting to soften, but they've got a ways to go. All right, hold on, folks. I'm going to get a cup of warm water to help see if I can speed this up. Maybe I should have done this before the live. Oh, that helps. Okay, we're almost there. We're going to let those continue to soak. And while they're soaking, I'm going to get my paper out. And what I want to use a nice rough paper this time because I want that granulation to really show up. Okay, I'm not sure. This is a Winsor & Newton 140-pound watercolor paper. It looks cold press. I don't think it's a rough. I think it's just a cold press, but it's got enough texture that I think it will create the effect that I'm looking for. And this is 100% cotton. And I'm just using my bone folder to give that a good crease. And I'm going to tear that. And do that one more time so that we can fit everything on the screen. And what I'm going to do is I'm not going to do a careful depiction of my beautiful clematis. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a kind of a what people are calling today intuitive watercolor. which is to let the watercolor do what it likes to do. So this is going to be a lot about technique and exploring what these wonderful pigments will do, how they react with one another, and how they settle into the texture of the paper, and also, you know, to play with these beautiful new brushes and to see how they work. What I plan on doing, I'm just looking to see which side I want to paint on here. What I plan on doing is then to take this and use it to make a card tomorrow on Paper Crafting Thursday. I'm just giving that paper a good spritz. I want the water to have a moment to be able to get soaked into the paper. Because of the thickness of this paper, it takes a few minutes for the water to be fully absorbed. I don't want the water to just sit on the top right now. I want it to go down into the fibers of the paper so it's nice and wet. And if I hold this against the light, you can see how wet that is. I'm wetting both sides of the paper. As I wet the paper is also expanding. So as the water gets absorbed, the paper is spreading out, just like a sponge would when you wet a sponge. All right, so that's looking good. And I'm laying it on my surface so that I am allowing these kind of bubbles to lay flat. All right, so I'm just keeping an eye on that, making sure that those areas are fully saturated. And when you do this, when you work this way, there's no need to work with a taped down or a stapled down paper. The paper will adhere to the surface and it will stay like that for the duration of the painting session, as long as the paper is damp. All right, let's get back to our brushes, and they are good to go. So if you look, I don't know if you can see, but I am able to bend them now. All right, so all that size has washed out of the brush, and I can feel that they are nice and soft. So I'm just going to give that a little rinse. And then I'm going to dump out this water because I don't want that size to be in there. I'm going to get some fresh water. The size that they use to hold the brush points is probably some kind of like an animal hide glue. It feels and acts a lot like rabbit skin glue, if anybody's ever used rabbit skin glue for gessoing. All right, so here they are, small, medium, and large. Number 1, 2, and 3. And I'm going to move this over a little bit so I can see it better. There we go. Actually, maybe what I'll do is I'll just put it here so you can see it as well. See what this looks like. Okay, now One last thing before we get started is I want to get my, I'll move this over for a minute so you can see the paint. Hopefully this will work. It looks pretty good. Okay, if you're watching, let me know you're out there. Tell me where you're tuning in from. I'm going to check my settings here, make sure that you can see and hear me all right. And that looks fine. And I think you can see almost all the colors. There's one more that's just out of view, but I think this will be the best I can do. I'm going to start with my medium brush. I also have to the side a sponge, and I'm just using that to absorb excess moisture from my brush. And I'm going to just pull out some of this pigment and see how that looks. So there's my yellow. This particular yellow looks a lot like a yellow ochre or a raw sienna. Okay, so there's that. And then here is a little bit of the yellow and the red together. That makes a beautiful flesh tone. So that's the rose madder. Rose madder permanent. The traditional rose madder is not a light fast color. Now here's some violet, and that's a beautiful looking violet. And then here I have some cerulean blue. My brush is a little bit dirty, so it's not the purest color, but you get a sense. I see Jasmine. Oh, from Quebec. Oh, welcome, Jasmine. I love Quebec. I haven't been there in a really long time, but I've spent some wonderful time both in Quebec City and also camping throughout Quebec. I love to camp, and I love to go to Canada to go camping. And here's Beverly from Florida. And Bev, how's the weather in Florida today? Are you comfortable down there? All right, so here we go. Here are my 5 colors. And the jadeite green is, it looks to me like a mineral green. It doesn't look like a vegetable green, but I wonder if we mix that with a little bit of the yellow oxide, and see what that does. That helps. I'm not used to this green, so maybe it'll just take a minute for me to see how that works with the other colors. But look at those beautiful strokes. That's very nice. I'm going to hold it vertically and see if I can get a line. Okay, well that's very fun. Now it might be a challenge to get the color of this licorice plant, but we'll get something close to it. It's not too bad. Now I hope you can see, and I'm going to zoom you in a little while, but you see the beautiful soft edges that I'm getting? That's because I'm working wet and wet. And what's so wonderful about the watercolor medium is that's the only medium that actually plays a part in the creation of your painting. And what do I mean by that? I mean that the water moves the paint on its own. It doesn't just stay where you put it. And that's the challenge of it, but it's also the beauty of it. And once you start to get the hang of it, and the way you do that is by practicing. You know what I always say, practice, practice, practice. That's how you get good. Anybody can do it if you put the time in. But the more you practice, the more you can anticipate how the paint will move, and you become more and more familiar with your different colors. Each color has its own different characteristics and behaves differently. So this is this beautiful violet color on its own, unmixed, very pretty. I'm loving this. Let me zoom you in a little bit so you can see better. I hope. Oh, my zoom, my over-excitable zoom. Hold on. Whoa. Okay, there we go. So, do you see how the paint is separating here? And it's getting this little kind of a halo effect. It's very cool. Let's try adding more color, and that's it. That's what I've done so far, is sort of a very light wash. Let's see what happens when I add more color to that, more pigment, less water. And I'm just holding the brush vertically, and I'm just going to let the tip of the brush drop onto the paper and see if I can increase the value. See if I can get darker. I'm going to go ahead and add another flower over here. The Clematis has 4 petals. So I can just, I mean, really, I'm doing nothing here. The painting is painting itself. All I'm doing is dropping the pigment and letting it move on its own accord. I'm going to go back to my licorice plant. Let's try a different brush. Okay, so this is the number 2 brush, and I don't know if these brushes are actually available to the public yet, so you may have to wait a minute before they are. But at the time when Lisa first announced the brushes, she only had a small supply. So you may have to wait a minute before they're readily available. But again, the name of this brush company is called Ruhong, R-U-H-O-N-G. It's a Chinese brush company, and honestly, I don't even know if they are readily available in this country. So you may have to do a little poking around the internet to find out more. All right, so I'm mixing up more of the more yellow green here. I'm going to get some of that stem. This is the little brush now. This is the number 1 brush, and I absolutely love these brushes. All right, I'm going to, as the paper dries, I will be able to get more and more of a hard edge, and then we'll be able to see what kind of marks the brushes can actually make. But right now, I'm taking advantage of the wet and wet to get these beautiful colors to blend and just do their thing. So right now, what I'm painting on, this is a glass palette. Okay, glass palette. But if you had a lightweight board, you could also pick up the whole thing and move it around to use gravity to help move the color from place to place. I'm going to take this, I'm going to put a little echo of it down here. And in this area, I can see that the paper is starting to dry, and I'm starting to be able to hold an edge to my stroke, and so I can do a little more drawing. And I am really loving this. It's a lot of fun. This licorice plant, these leaves are so interesting because they all kind of curl together. They look like a curly mass, and with this beautiful kind of a velvety texture, and all these kind of wrinkly leaves. They're very unusual. They also grow really well in pots. We use them to as filler. If any of you like to create floral designs in pots for the summer, there's an adage that is thrillers, spillers, and I forgot what the third one is. So basically it's having your main focal interest plant, which is typically an upright plant, and then you have a filler which you grow around it to help support it and give it a little contrast. And then there's something called a spiller, which are the plants that have the vining tendrils that will come down over the pot and just make for a very charming effect. And this licorice plant is both a filler and a spiller. Oh, and a thriller. Thriller, spillers, and what did I say? Thriller, spiller, and filler. Those are the three. All right, so let me get the big brush, see how that behaves. And I want to see if I can show you this. I want to show you the sheen on the paper, so that the shiniest areas have been absorbed sufficiently. You can see where I've just painted, it's still pretty wet, but in much of the areas the water has begun to get absorbed by the paper. It's now fully saturated. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my paper towel. I'm just going to remove some of this excess moisture, because now that I've already achieved my wet and wet effect, I want to start getting some more edges. So I want to do that. I want to allow the paper to dry a little bit. It's going to take a few minutes. While we're waiting for that to happen, I'm just going to grab my great big brush and see what that'll do. I'll take some of my green and my yellow. The other thing about that's very special about watercolors is that they're transparent. Now, gouache is what's known as an opaque watercolor because it does have a filler in it. Usually it's a calcium carbonate, a kind of chalk that gives the gouache some body. But the watercolors, like I'm using today, these are transparent watercolors, and they have the ability to be layered one on top of the other. So you can see I'm getting a nice rich dark here. If I take the brush and if I lay it horizontally on the paper, the shape of the brush is going to pretty much draw the leaf for me. Okay, and I can add a couple of accents here and there. the brush has a magnificent point, and that wonderful point enables me to draw with it. So even though this is my biggest brush, with a very light hand, I can weave this stem through there. Okay. All right, I'm going to go back to my small brush now and see if I can put a little more detail in the flowers, into the blossoms themselves. And mix up more of my violet color. The blossoms on the Clematis are kind of a trumpet shape, and so they have a nice dark cup in the shadows. And this violet is not what I would call a particularly strong violet. It's a beautiful violet, but it doesn't get as dark and as rich, for instance, as that jadeite green. And that's a little unusual, because usually when I mix my violets myself with the red and the blue, I get a very strong color that I have to be careful with as I use it to make sure it doesn't get too dark too soon. But this particular violet is allowing me to build up my dark tones more slowly. It's not as overpowering as some of the others. And I will tell you the names of these pigments again in just a couple of minutes. Now if I take my green and mix it with a little bit of the violet, let's see what that does for me. This should give me a pretty good dark green. And it actually, this green and this violet gives me a beautiful neutral tone, which I like very much. I could see that this could be, it's kind of a grayish, cool shadow color, which I quite like, and it's working very nicely on these licorice leaves. So I'm just looking at the places where the shadow is collecting on these leaves and just putting a couple of little marks to indicate that, just make the impression of light and shade, hopefully. The other thing that I'm noticing is that the brush is holding a wonderful quantity of pigment and water, so I'm not having to re-wet the brush as often as I would with, say, a synthetic brush. These are natural hair brushes, and they behave like natural hair brushes, which is to say that they're more absorbent, they hold more water, they've got a little more spring action to them, they're more responsive. And these particular brushes are doing all of the above beautifully. All right, so far I've used the yellow the violet and the green. I haven't really gotten into the blue so much, so let's take a little bit of this beautiful cerulean shade and let's see how this works in the background. If I mix it with a little bit of the green, this should help those leaves to go away from us. And that is beautiful. Beautiful color. And it's doing exactly what I'm hoping it will do, which is to send these leaves going around and away from us. Okay. Then finally, the last color, which we haven't used at all, is this beautiful permanent rose madder. So this is what it looks like. And so what I want to do now is I want to find places where I can introduce some of this red color, because this is going to help to create a full spectrum of color. I'll have all my primaries, my yellow, my red, and my blue. And so let's see. I think I can add some in here. When you add a new color to your painting, it's going to change the way the other colors appear. It's going to add a new vibration, a new harmonic to your work. So red is a color that comes forward in space, so I want to make sure that I'm keeping it on the area of the petals that are closest to me. And I'm taking a good amount of this red and I'm dropping it onto this bud here that's still wet, so that has a chance to mingle. And because I'm working wet and wet, and this is really nice paper, it's staying moist enough to allow me to continue to get a nice soft edge. All right, I'm just playing now. I'm just inventing this. You know, part of what we do as artists is design. And so this is the designer now coming out, introducing a new shape, a new color, and using my imagination to help facilitate that. I'm going to add some green to the stems. Starting to be able to capture a line now, and that's working out nicely. All right, well, I think I'm going to leave it there. I hope that was fun to watch. These are the beautiful brushes. Love them. They're even better than what I thought they were going to be, and I knew they were going to be great. I love them. I'm going to have a lot of fun with them. And the colors. So again, for those of you who are interested, the colors I used today are transparent yellow oxide, permanent rose madder, and these are all Daniel Smith colors, ultramarine violet, cerulean blue, and jadeite green. Now, for if you're following along and you're painting, I'd love to see what you do. So please go to the Watercolor and Stamping Up Paper Crafting Projects Facebook group and ask to be invited in. It's a private group, and it provides a space where everybody can share their work, and we can see what everybody else is doing, be inspired, get new ideas. It's for both watercolor and paper crafting, and especially for combining the two. So if you stay tuned tomorrow for Paper Crafting Thursday right here at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time, I will be using the painting that I painted today to create some paper crafting project, which I don't know what it's going to be yet, so tune in to find out. So thank you very much for joining me. Stay well, stay happy, stay creative, and thank you, Lisa, for the beautiful brushes. I absolutely love them, and for the colors. It was a lot of fun. I will see you tomorrow. So I hope that between now and then you'll get a little painting done so that you'll be able to use it in your projects. So bye for now. See you next time.